to transfer talk. Less than 2 weeks ago in the window and clubs are starting to act. Marcus Rashford, though, is still a Manchester United player. Details on his future coming up. Manchester City have announced the signing of Vitor Haish. Omar Mamouche is set to join too, but Kyle Walker's time at the club is coming to an end. Brentford are set to reject a bid from Nottingham Forest for striker Yoane Wissa. And John Duran is still an Aston Villa player as West Ham make a bid to sign the forward. Good afternoon to you wherever you're watching us today, to Dan Bardell, to Flex and Olivia Bazaglo. Let's start though with Manchester City, who are very busy right now. Abdulkadir Kusanov joined the club yesterday. It looks like there could be further incomings too. However, Kyle Walker looks like he may leave. For the very latest, we can cross to Manchester and speak to Ben Ransom right now. Ben, it looks like Walker's move is moving ever closer.
Yeah, it feels like we've been talking about it for a long time, but it does now feel as though that move is getting closer, with Kyle Walker expected in Italy today to begin the medical part of it and the completion of what looks to be a loan deal with AC Milan. That's certainly what we're expecting. Now, from a City point of view, they're still just maintaining that nothing's been absolutely decided yet. But I think we can read a lot into the fact that Kyle Walker's been left out of the last 3 matchday squads completely since going to speak to the director of football, Djiki Begiristain, and saying that he wanted to explore opportunities elsewhere. We know that AC Milan have been looking at how they are going to try and strengthen in this window and whether indeed Marcus Rashford was going to be their non-EU player to come in. But it looks as though it's going to be Kyle Walker, the club captain here at Manchester City, who has achieved so much success in his time here. I mean, let's not forget he was one of Pep's first signings in that first summer when in Pep's first season, they struggled somewhat, hadn't they? So Pep decided that he wanted to start that overhaul, and Kyle Walker was central to that, coming in for a fee at the time that was a record for a defender in English football, some £50 million, including the add-ons from Tottenham Hotspur. And since then, they've won 6 out of 7 Premier League titles. An unusual situation for a club captain to want to leave midway through the season, but it feels as though that one should be a mere formality, with Walker, as I say, expected in Italy to put the finishing touches to that move to AC Milan.
Ben, one signing in yesterday, another today. Can we expect Omar Mamouche and others to be completed soon too?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Manchester City doing business in January, and they've been very successful so far as well. They've worked quickly. I think the pressure has been on since that really, I suppose it was unusual, the blip. We've never seen anything quite like it before Christmas, that run of poor results, and obviously the fact that they'd lost Rodri and were kept getting these injuries across the back line. Pep and Djiki Begiristain obviously sat down together and decided they need to strengthen, and they are pushing on a number of fronts, and 2 over the line already in the last few days has been a real boost for the club. Today, Vitor Haish is the player that's come in. Young defender, 19 years old, from Palmeiras, a very highly rated central defender, and I know someone that City really like because of his leadership qualities. He's been a captain through the age groups as he's stepped into men's first team senior football, and those leadership qualities are something that City really value. Before that, Abdulkadir Kusanov, the first Uzbekistani player to play in the Premier League, he completed his move here as well. So 2 central defenders in, which obviously opens the door for someone like Kyle Walker to leave. And yeah, Omar Mamouche is the player now we're waiting for more news on. He's having his medical in Manchester today, having arrived here in the city. And this would be a real coup in January, because we always talk about the challenge, don't we, of signing big name players who are having successful seasons with their clubs in this window particularly. So to get a player who is second only to Harry Kane in the Bundesliga scoring charts in January will be a real boost to them. So City moving forward, obviously once the move starts to be completed, we start to hear from the signings, which is fantastic. And Vitor Haish, understandably, is delighted today to finally be confirmed as a Manchester City player.
Significa a realização de sonho, né? Acho que desde criança eu sempre sonhava com uma oportunidade dessa, de jogar num clube do tamanho do City. Então acho que é uma realização não minha, mas como da minha família e todas as pessoas que me ajudaram a chegar aqui. Então acho que é uma realização e vou trabalhar bastante para que essa realização se torne muito mais feliz.
Para aqueles que talvez não tenham visto você jogar, você pode descrever seu estilo? É um estilo poderoso, de ritmo, mais físico? Como é que é?
Eu sou um atleta que tenho muita vontade, então tenho muita vontade de ganhar. Então pode ter certeza que eu vou deixar tudo dentro de campo. Tenho muita vontade, determinação. Sou um atleta que gosta bastante do combate, tenho um bom cabeceio também e um bom passe.
So good to hear from Vitor H there. Ben, we've never seen City spend like this in the January transfer window. They're acting quickly with this rebuild process.
Yeah, it seems as though they've brought forward some of their squad overhaul. We've spoken a lot, haven't we? We've spoken a lot around the time of Pep Guardiola extending his contract about the shape of the squad, in particular the players that were getting into their 30s and the players that he brought here some 9-10 years ago to try and be part of this unprecedented era of dominance. But the natural fact that time does catch up with everyone, and I suppose Kyle Walker is one of those players who is getting to the age where we've seen this year he's not quite been himself. A couple of years ago you'd have said he was among the very best in the world. Not so this season in terms of performances, and Rico Lewis has supplanted him from the first team in many matches before this window. So you can see that City are looking to overhaul their squad, and you look at the sort of players they're bringing in, young players. The two defenders in particular, Vitor Reich and Abdulkadir Kusanov, young defenders with a lot of potential. Omar Mamouche only turns 26 next month, so he also is a player who has a bright future, his peak years potentially ahead of him. But we've not seen City go into this market in this window for such a long time. I think the last time I remember a big signing was when they brought in Aymeric Laporte in 2018, so go back, 7 years I was stood here talking about that deal, and most of the windows have been quite quiet. It'll be really interesting to hear from Pep Guardiola. I've tried, as you know, to get him to talk about transfers in pre-match press conferences over the last couple of weeks. He said, look, I'm not talking about anything until the deal is done. Well, since I last spoke to him, 2 deals have been done. So Keith Downey, my colleague, on his way to Paris, head of that Champions League game against Paris Saint-Germain, will speak to Pep a bit later on. So around 6 o'clock this evening, hopefully, Pep is willing to talk about the 2 new arrivals, because it's exciting times for Manchester City fans in this window.
Ben, thank you very much for now. Right, OK, let's get to Manchester United. And is another club trying to swoop in on Patrick Dorgu? United are interested in him, but Napoli are now trying to sign him. Napoli are preparing to sign him and let him stay on loan at Lecce until the end of the season. An agreement close. However, if United were to offer around £34 million, it could change the dynamic. It's our understanding that United officials are due in Italy to talk to Lecce about Dorgu and Napoli about Alejandro Garnacho. Flex, on that news, what is your reaction to that? Does that indicate that Garnacho could potentially be on the way in this transfer window?
I think it's the last week or so. There's been a lot of news about Garnacho and reports linking him to moves away, and it seems like the line from the club has definitely been that they're not actively trying to sell him, and players aren't actively trying to leave. We know the Marcus Rashford situation, but I think it's a real possibility that Manchester United would look at a substantial/significant bid if it were put on the table for Alejandro Garnacho. I think if you're looking at Napoli, they now have the money through from the Kvaratskhelia deal, so there is money there to be spent. And if you're looking towards Chelsea, which we'll talk a little bit about later, they've also got money to spend as well. So I think it'll be really interesting in this window to see what happens with Garnacho. Manchester United, of course, with the PSR situation, that would represent 100% profit, which they could use to reinvest into the squad. But can they guarantee a replacement for Garnacho in this window? One that is of suitable quality, that is part of Ruben Amorim's squad of what he would like the squad to look like. That's a different ballgame, because you can't be letting Alejandro Garnacho go. You've already let Anthony go. Marcus Rashford's looking to leave. If there aren't ready-made replacements for these players in this window, Manchester United will be severely weaker. And you can look at Manchester United now and think, what does weaker look like? But it would really be a lot worse if you give away 3 other players without replacement.
In terms of incomings, Olivia, Patrick Dorgu is clearly a name of interest to a number of clubs now. Why do United want to try and sign him?
Yeah, as we reported upon Ruben Amorim's appointment, that sort of left wing-back role has been circled as the sort of priority position for Manchester United and was the one transfer highly likely to happen in this window. Patrick Dorgu is one of a number of options United have been looking at. The Denmark international is more affordable than their other top options, such as Nuno Mendes and Milos Kerkez. Just 20 years old and has earned rave reviews from those who've watched him regularly over in Italy. Amongst Serie A defenders, he ranks first for opposition box touch touches and second for shots taken with 34, you can see at the bottom there. So clearly a threat going forward. He's versatile, can play on either the left or the right. He has pace to burn, making him suitable for those wide roles in Amorim's system. Defensively, he is reliable but needs to further develop his overall defensive skills. Strong in tackling, ranking 10th in the league for defenders this season, but it is behind in interceptions there, 35th. In summary, Dorgu is already demonstrating his potential in the competitive environment of Serie A with Lecce. But with continued development and refinement, he looks set to become a standout defender in those years to come. I mean, Flex, with those in mind, looking at those stats you can see there, is this a situation where you feel like United are going to have to pay up, especially with Napoli also being interested? Is it a case of paying up and getting their man, or from those stats you feel like you need him?
From that point of view, if Manchester United have identified him as a player that they really would like under Ruben Amorim, yes, if they see him as that important, you're going to have to pay. What I find interesting here in this news today, with the breaking news of sort of Napoli trying to get involved in this deal, is the fact that they're willing to buy him and leave him on loan at Lecce to develop further, or they probably got different needs to Manchester United, whereas United, what we're being told is that they want to get him in now. So very interesting how they see it as development. You can stay in Serie A and work on your game, and Manchester United saying, get here now, we need help. But if they want their man, Livia, absolutely, they're going to have to pay for him. And I think now Lecce clearly have the leverage there, because there's two clubs interested in him. Manchester United clearly in big need of reinvestment into the squad and to kick it on. And they know that. So now that price, and if Manchester United procrastinate on this and take a while, that price is likely to keep increasing.
And Dan, where do we stand with Marcus Rashford? He's not played for Manchester United for more than a month now. Do you think he'll be on the move this month? Time's ticking now.
I think it's really complex when someone's got as high a salary package as Marcus Rashford has got. We know some of the other leagues who may want to bring in this type of player, they don't have the wage structures that would enable them to pay a high proportion of Marcus Rashford's wages. He's almost in limbo at the moment, and it's always difficult when a player's kind of taken out the firing line, like Marcus Rashford has been at the moment, whether that's a joint decision or whether that's a club decision. We're seeing more and more players that are perhaps moving away are taken out in the January market and will either be sold, loaned or reintegrated in February. But with Rashford, I almost feel like Manchester United could do with him playing right now. Whilst he's not there, you feel like his value is almost depreciating. I get that if you go, Manchester United's ideal world would be he'd go out on loan, do well, and then they'd be able to get a high transfer fee for him that would act as pure profit. But whilst he's not playing at the moment, I don't really feel like that does Manchester United any favours. And I certainly don't think it does the player any favours either. I know he's training alone and he's working on keeping himself fit, maybe with a mind that if he doesn't get a move, he can reintegrate himself into Manchester United. But I just wonder, Flex, how has it gone too far now for him to be able to reintegrate himself? I
think when you say about, you know, who does it really help with it being in this situation? Of course, you look at Manchester United, say 13th in the Premier League, not playing very well. Surely you need Marcus Rashford. But I think Ruben Amorim's plan and vision is much bigger than that. He's basically saying if a player has come out and said, I need a new challenge, and how can I build with this player? What am I showing to the rest of the dressing room that I'm willing to work on a player, give minutes to a player who says he essentially is not in this fight with us. His mind is elsewhere. So I think Ruben Amorim's principles are, it's a difficult decision to make, and if you lose in football matches, it doesn't look like a good decision, but I think his principles are, I need to establish and ascertain who is with us and who is not. And Marcus Rashford has said in an interview that, you know, he's ready for a new challenge. So that made it quite easy, I think, for Ruben Amorim to stand on that hill.
Yeah, Flex, we understand that Rashford's been doing additional training sessions at the club's training base. Yeah. Do you think the fans would welcome him back if he was reintegrated into that side?
I think look, at Old Trafford, the match-going fans always want to get behind the player. So I think yes. But I do think there would be a feeling amongst fans that Marcus Rashford would have to prove pretty quickly that he was in the right frame of mind, the right feeling to produce, you know. And of course, football fans, we can change our minds like the weather. If you score loads of goals, yes, it's all forgotten. And football can change very, very quickly. But I do think if he does stay, he would have to show and demonstrate, not just through the best form, but just the application that he's willing to stay and be part of it.
Could be a busy few days for Manchester United. There's been loads of transfer news we've been bringing you already today on Sky Sports News. Could Yoane Wissa's time at Brentford be coming to an end? We've got news of a bid from a Premier League team to tell you about next. Brentford are expected to reject Nottingham Forest bid for Yoane Wissa, which is understood to have been lower than £22 million. It falls well short of their valuation of the striker. Brentford, as you can expect, not keen to sell him, and their bid is thought to be much lower than what Brentford's valuation of the player is. Dan, it feels like quite a low offer for somebody who's been setting the Premier League on fire the last 2 seasons.
It feels very much like one of those offers that's kind of putting the feelers out, testing the water, see if the player gets wind of it. I can understand why Forest would want him, but actually, I can also kind of see why Brentford may sell him. I know that might be a little bit controversial, given how well he's doing this season. They haven't missed Ivan Toney at all with him and Mbeumo leading the line for them. Brentford have been a fantastic watch at times this season. But Brentford notoriously have been good sellers. They've sold players at the right time. I don't think there's any danger of Brentford going down this season. He's 28 years old with 18 months left on his contract, going really well, getting a lot of headlines. Is this now that kind of peak time where Brentford look at it and think, well, actually, we can extract maximum value for this player if we sell him now? And from the player's perspective as well, I can see why Forest would be attractive. This could be, because he's going well, this could be his chance to get that big payday, get that big salary, go to a team that's chasing Champions League, potentially playing Champions League football next season. So I can see, in a weird way, why it would be attractive to both, as weird as that may seem.
Olivia, do you see Forest desperately needing him right now? I mean, would he fit into the starting 11 when you've got Chris Wood, 14 Premier League goals this season? They're flying with the wingers as well. Yeah,
I think their team's sort of set, isn't it? They're doing well. They have a real, genuine possibility of playing Champions League football. But then, again, on the other hand, you want to boost that in any way you can. And someone like Yoane Wissa would give them an even better chance because of how well he's playing. But right now, I don't think Forest are desperate for him. They don't need him. The only thing is, looking to the future, he's 5 years younger than Chris Wood. I mean, his record's pretty good there, like you say, James, especially the last 2 seasons. And especially this season, I would say. This is the best we've seen Yoane Wissa play, so effective. Chris Wood doesn't look like slowing down anytime soon. And I can't believe we're actually saying that because of, we've seen Chris Wood for years. But again, this is the best football he's been playing. It's remarkable. And maybe that's something Forest will have to look at when Chris Wood eventually does start slowing down. But even at 33, that's not going to be any time soon if we're looking at how Forest are playing right now. So maybe one for the future. I can see why they would be interested in Yoane Wissa. But to me, I don't think Forest need him right now, and it doesn't feel like he would come in and start for them because I feel like it would disrupt what they've got going on right now, which is a really good thing.
Flex, it feels like Brentford and Nottingham Forest are clearly some way off in terms of their valuation of the player, but this would be a real statement signing in January, especially with Forest having ambitions to potentially qualify for the Champions League. I know Liv laughed at the suggestion of them win the title this year, but Opta, the supercomputer, gives them a 0.1% chance.
Yeah, I did. Exactly.
I mean, Liv laughs about 25 times a show.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
that's a normal occurrence.
You guys are funny. Compliment.
I do. Whilst I agree with pretty much everything you said about why it could be unsettling, if you look at it from a sheer ambition point of view from Forest, and if you're a Forest fan, you could look at it from the exciting side of it and say, listen, we believe we are going for the title. We believe we are going for the top 4, definitely. And to do that, we need strength in depth. We don't just want a good 11. When somebody picks up an injury or when these games are coming thick and fast, and when it gets to the real business end, when the season kicks into March, April, May, and there's, not many games to go, and you've got Man City just behind you, you've got Chelsea there, you've got Newcastle, and Forest find himself needing to draw on different... Nuno wants different solutions to different problems. You've got a player like Yoane Wissa in your team. The quality and drop-off from an Anthony Elanga or from a Chris Wood or from Callum Hudson-Odoi on the other side is not big if you bring in someone like Yoane Wissa. And also, no offence to Taiwo Awoniyi, but if they can swap him for Wissa, then again, that's an upgrade. So I think they're looking at it from a point of, it's not no disrespect to Forest, we're not in a relegation battle, we're just trying to hang on in there. No, we want straight intent for players that are really good in this league, and we want to go for this thing. So it does show real intent. I
do understand why, for Yoane Wissa, Forest could get Champions League, they are a huge club, but why is... We've seen what Taiwo Awoniyi has been for Forest this season, and that has been, he's played a lot of games, but coming off the bench. I just can't see any world in which Yoane Wissa, Brentford's all-time top Premier League goalscorer, is going to swap what he's got going on at Brentford right now to go and sit on the bench for Forest.
Unless it's a personal thing, though, where you can say, look, I'm 28, I've got 18 months left on my contract. I could probably at least double, maybe even triple my wages,
Maybe,
really,
but
and get a big contract.
Yeah, it's like a toss-up between the two, isn't it?
The football versus the
football
finance.
versus the finance. And I don't know, I just get the vibe from Yoane Wissa that he loves playing football and wants to play football. He's that sort of player. I mean, I don't know him personally, so he might be in it for the money, who knows? But I don't think he would swap what he's got going on right now for a sort of a bit part role at Forest, which I think it would be right now.
Brentford fans would definitely
flying.
that.
Why would they change it?
I disagree with the bit part team, because if you think about how Brentford play, they've got lots of different setups. Wissa has played in various positions across the front three. I think he's a player that would cover Wood, but he can also play with him and facilitate Wood by playing on the flanks. I think if he went there, you need players like that can play in different positions. We spoke earlier about forwards. Having one centre forward, if you get an injury, it's a problem. Wissa is proven, and he's having the time of his life this season.
Not going to start every game though if he goes to Forest.
I think he.
It might be the challenge he's willing to accept to excel his career, though, at the end of the league.
Forest are buying from a position of strength, aren't they? Now, players are going to look at Forest right now and think that's a really, really attractive proposition, and that might be enough to sway him.
OK, a reminder of that news. Brentford are expected to reject Nottingham Forest bid, thought to be lower than £22 million for Yoane Wissa. We'll bring you more on that throughout the day on Sky Sports News. Let's get to Aston Villa, though. They've signed a fullback today, Andres Garcia from Levante, and they've also rejected a bid from West Ham for striker John Duran. Villa consider him not for sale. Dan, Villa in action tonight in the Champions League once again. Do you think any offer in this transfer window will get to what Aston Villa want? They don't want to let him go, do they?
I still can't believe I'm hearing those words I never thought I'd hear a few years ago. I don't think there's, unless it's an absolutely astronomical offer, there's nothing in it for Villa to sell him in January. Villa are fighting on 3 competitions at the moment. They've got ambitions to finish top 4 or 5 again and get in the Champions League again. And, I think it's realistic to say with Unai Emery, Villa could go quite deep in the Champions League. It's worked having those 2 strikers this season, and John Duran, I know that Villa view him as the best young striker in Europe. So I think at the moment there's absolutely no world in which they sell John Duran in January. He's too important. He got himself into the team on merit just before his suspension, and that's no mean feat given that he's up against Ollie Watkins, who's been so prolific over the last 18 months and under Unai Emery. You just look at his stats there. I mean, he's barely started a game and he scored 7 goals in the Premier League this season, 86 minutes per goal, at a time when big Premier League clubs are scrambling around trying to find a centre forward. Villa have got 2, and I think they'd be loath to lose John Duran.
And Liv, we understand Villa want upwards of around £70 million. They bought him for about £18 million a couple of years ago. Can you understand why they're holding out for such a big fee? I mean, he scored some really important goals in the Premier League and Champions League this season.
I mean, yeah, he's been brilliant. I think it's always a really difficult task for anyone, let alone a striker, to come off the bench and have an impact. And he has done that pretty much every single time he's come off the bench for Villa. This season, he's their top scorer. He scored more goals than Ollie Watkins. I know you saw his Premier League goals there. He scored 12 in all competitions. He's only started 7 games. And like you say, Dan, he started 3 games in December where he scored in each one and like you say, played his way into the team. But James, you just said there, 6 of his 12 goals have been winning goals. He's coming on at vital times and making such an impact. The only thing I would say is Villa are in a great position right now because, like you say, they know what they've got in John Duran. But I just feel like there is going to come a point where they're going to have to make a decision because it's so difficult to keep Ollie Watkins and John Duran happy. I think there will come a point where one of them will be a little bit unhappy at the role that they're playing because the other one's scoring goals. And they might have to make a decision at some point about which one they go for. But I don't think that's right now.
Who's going to get the start tonight? Aston Villa taking on Monaco in the Champions League. We'll keep you across that on Sky Sports News. But up next, we're live to Arsenal. Can they bring in a striker this month? They need to bring in a striker this month. Plus news of a foreign club coming in for Southampton's Tyler Diblin. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Let's get to Arsenal. They need to sign a striker, but will they? Gary Cottrell is at the club's training ground for us now. Gary, it's well documented, this striker situation. Do you see them solving this issue this month? We know Arteta wants to invest.
The noise outside the inner sanctum of Arsenal, down here at the training ground where all the decisions are made, away from here, it's the same noise, isn't it? Arsenal need a striker. Arsenal need an out-and-out goal scorer. It's the same this window so far, the last window, the window before that, the window before that. Windows going back in recent history, it's always been the same call from pundits, from fans. But here at the training ground, where they know what's going on, 3 weeks into this January transfer window, you can cut the silence. You can't hear a pin drop. Listen. Nothing when it comes to talk of a striker being imminent and coming in. The mood music seems to have changed with 2 weeks to go. I have to say that because of those injuries. Obviously, Saka out until at least March. Gabriel Jesus out at least until the end of the season. Mikel Arteta said after that draw against Aston Villa, didn't he, that he looked to his bench and he found it frustrating compared to other bench because he didn't have a lot to call on, particularly in that area of the pitch. OK, Raheem Sterling was there and came on, but he seems to have lost his confidence. The other two options were academy players, one very, very young academy player with hardly any first-team experience under their belt and no Premier League experience at all under their belt. You look, of course, at the goals not scored, chances created in the FA Cup, in the Carabao Cup, in the league, but the chances not being put away. So Mikel Arteta potentially seeming to change his mind. He says due diligence is being done for the short term, for the medium term, for the long term in that area of the pitch and elsewhere. But at the moment, despite loads of names being linked with Arsenal, nothing imminent. Nobody seems about to be jumping on a plane, getting into a car and coming here to the training ground. Will that change? Well, certainly Arsenal fans, and I think Mikel Arteta is probably hoping so.
And Gary, you've spoken to Mikel Arteta a lot in the recent weeks. Is there a sense of frustration that they've not brought a forward in? I spoke to him last Friday, and you get a sense there is real urgency. He says we need to do something. Yeah, you spoke to him on Friday ahead of that Villa match. I spoke to him on Tuesday ahead of the North London derby. And he was the same. He did seem to be warming to the idea of bringing a player in. Normally he says, doesn't he, James, well, listen, I love my players. I love what I've got. They will come up with the goals that I need. He will always defend Kai Havertz, who's had his critics this season. He's always first out to say that he trusts in Havertz. And, of course, he's got other players who do know where the net is. But the loss of Saka and the loss of Jesus is a big blow to him. And I think he doesn't show his frustration, I don't think, so much about not being able to sign a striker or even players elsewhere on the pitch because they've got defensive problems as well. He shows frustration, of course, from a bad performance or a bad defeat or a bad refereeing decision, in his opinion. But he does trust the regime they've got here. Obviously, the Edu has left a gap, but that's being filled, he says, by those who are doing his role in the interim. And I think that if he could get a striker in January, he would. But, of course, he always says as well, doesn't he, far from being frustrated, he says they've got to fit into the dressing room and they've got to be as good, if not better, than the options that I've got. And of course, this time of the year in January, the money that clubs will be asking, that adds to the difficulty of bringing in a player. He does sign players in January. Martin Odegaard, the current club captain, so important to Arsenal, came in originally, didn't he, on loan in January. And Leandro Trossard, who's, by the way, the player who will be put up ahead of this Champions League game against Dinamo Zagreb, came in January. And both of those have proved that it is a market that you can do business in if you can find the right player. Gary, thank you very much for now. We'll hear from Mikel Arteta around 3 p.m. on Sky Sports News. Right, let's continue the debate there because the Monday Night Football, Jamie Carragher spoke and said there's no way Arsenal can win the title without signing a striker. So, Flex, do you think this missing striker is the final piece in the jigsaw, or the issue's a little bit more deep than that? I
think the issues are a little bit bigger than that. I don't think it's just give Arsenal Alexander Isak, then click your fingers, they win the league. I honestly don't think that. I think if you look at replacements for Bukayo Saka and other help across the front line, I think that's an issue. I also think, like Jamie Carragher alluded to in Monday Night Football last night, that there's not much creation coming from the middle of the park as well. Odegaard hasn't been at his best. Then who do you look to? Declan Rice is a thoroughbred 6. We spoke about that earlier in our 9 a.m. show about how good sixes they've been. He's a fantastic number 6, but he's been asked to do a lot more. Thomas Partey isn't a natural creator as well. Mikel Merino also isn't. Neither is Jorginho. So there's a heavy reliance on the likes of Martin Odegaard. And obviously, Ethan Nwaneri is injured at the minute, but a really young player in his first breakout season at this level. So I don't think it's as easy as just get a striker and it's all done for Arsenal. Also, they need to improve in terms of their own mentality, like the development of the mentality of the team in terms of, you're 2-0 up against Villa. Yes, of course, there's injuries and there's problems, but you're 2-0 up. Manage the game. How many times have Arsenal fans rued the misses of when Fulham have taken some points off them, or Southampton or Villa or whoever it may be? So there's also some concerns within the squad that need to kick on mentally as well. But a striker is definitely needed. I would 100% agree with that.
I would think it solves quite a lot of their problems because, like you say, Arteta's been very complimentary of Kai Havertz, and I think everyone knows that Kai Havertz probably isn't a number 9. He's not a natural number 9. With Gabriel Jesus as well, you can see what he offers Arsenal. But again, goals, and that's not it. Gabriel Jesus is a brilliant footballer, but again, you need other players to chip in, to help out. And I know they do have other issues, like game management against Villa is the perfect example, but I think if you gave Arsenal Alexander Isak, the calibre of chances that Kai Havertz is getting, Alexander Isak finishes them every single time. Alexander Isak needs one chance, and I think with Kai Havertz, I don't think he's the sort of player that's going to create something himself. I feel like he needs service. And even then, when he's getting into the right positions, which I suppose Arsenal fans will still be happy with because he's making the right movements, he's getting those chances, but Alexander Isak is someone that can create something out of nothing. He can finish a half chance. And I just think he solves a lot of Arsenal's problems if they go out and get him. But it's not as simple as going out and getting Alexander Isak. And he's not the sort of player that they're going to get in January. He's just not. Newcastle are not in a position where they are going to let Alexander Isak go. And we've spoken about this whole month. It's about finding the right profile of striker, and more often than not, they're not available in January. So it's a really sticky situation for Arsenal to be in. But, yeah, I think, a 20-goal-a-season striker would solve most people's problems, to be honest, but they're so difficult to get. So
Absolutely. Arsenal in desperate search for a striker. We'll bring you Mikel Arteta's press conference around 3 p.m. today on Sky Sports News. Let's get to Chelsea now, because AC Milan want to sign João Felix. Chelsea consider the player unavailable for sale. But as we know, every player has a price. Liv, could you see Felix leaving this month, considering he only joined in the summer?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think there's question marks over why Chelsea bought him in the first place. I think everyone now knows it was to do with FFP and allowing then Conor Gallagher to go on pure profit, which is actually ironic because it's midfielders that Chelsea are after right now, because Enzo Fernandez is injured, Romeo Lavia is proving injury prone. So how they could have done with the Conor Gallagher backup in the squad right now with Leslie Ogachukwu and Andre Santos out on loan and Chelsea having no plans to recall them. As for João Felix, it's difficult, isn't it? He's very aesthetically pleasing. He's very easy on the eye when you watch him play football. Hasn't had the impact he would have hoped. He's only really played in the Conference League. Listen, it's so difficult when Cole Palmer is the player that you're trying to disrupt. That's never going to happen because even when Cole Palmer isn't playing well, I know we saw João Felix come on for him last night, but last 10 minutes of the game, Chelsea were 3-1 up. If that game's in the balance still, I don't think Cole Palmer comes off because he's the one player in Chelsea's squad that is going to create something out of nothing. And with the whole Mykhailo Mudryk situation as well, that's one less winger Chelsea have. João Felix has come on playing off the left. So it was an interesting buy in the summer anyway. I think there was question marks over it. I think there's even more question marks now. However, I can't see Chelsea letting João Felix go when there's all this situation with Mykhailo Mudryk and other wingers right now.
We'll wait to see if Felix is on the move this January. Now, Matheus Cunha is yet to sign a new deal at Wolves. We'll discuss his future next. And Emerson Royal, is he on his way back to the Premier League?
Just extraordinary.
Is he world class?
World class, yeah.
Kutcher goes for goal! Magic! Absolutely magic!
In terms of transfers potentially happening in this window, RB Leipzig want to sign Southampton starlet Tyler Dibbling. Now, the German club are willing to pay around £25 million for the winger. Flex, big clubs want this guy, and you can see why.
Yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant. Of course, Southampton have been really, really struggling and will probably continue to stay in the division, but he has been a ray of sunshine. 18 years of age, 24 appearances, 4 goals and 2 assists in it, like I said, in a struggling side. My team, Manchester United, absolutely struggled for 80 minutes against Southampton, and Tyler Dibbling, I can tell you, I saw with my own eyes, was an absolute handful. And in the first game they played against Manchester United, which they went on to lose 3-0, he gave Diogo Dalot an absolute torrid time and ended up conceding the penalty. Dalot did as well, because he just couldn't handle him, and he's done the same to a lot of defenders as well. He's got a contract to 2027, and Russell Martin, before he left, was sort of talking in press conferences saying if people wanted him for 25 million, paraphrasing, but I think he said that's not enough for his left foot, I think he said, or words to that avail, and said that, you know, the club want him to sign a new contract, but maybe agents and other people not so much. So I can see why Southampton really want to tie him down to a bigger, longer contract, because he is going to be in demand if Southampton do go on to get relegated.
Dan, it feels like he's been the one shining light in what has been such a disappointing season for Southampton. But whether he leaves in January or not, do you think it's inevitable that he departs Southampton in the summer if he doesn't leave now?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's easier or harder to stand out in a struggling team, but there's no doubting that he has stood out, and it is inevitable that he goes. Again, I don't think it will be in January that he goes. I think another half a season in the Premier League will do him good, but there's no doubt in the summer, if Southampton go down, that teams are definitely going to be interested in him. He's a player, once again, that's spent time in a big academy, has gone elsewhere and found himself, and he's a player that just looks ready, doesn't he? At such a young age, to go and stand out at 18 years old in the Premier League isn't easy, and he's done that in a really struggling side. So I think there's no doubt that he'll be playing in top leagues for years to come.
In terms of incoming, Southampton are set to sign Albert Grombach from Rennes. He had a medical yesterday and an initial loan move until the end of the season. There's also the option for them to make this move permanent for £12.7 million. Right, let's get to another struggling side in the form of Wolves. Their forward, Mateus Cunha, has been heavily criticised by manager Vitor Pereira last night for his body language. There are some contract issues. He hasn't signed a new deal yet. Let's hear from Pereira now.
The body language, I don't like this body language. I want someone as a captain trying to help the team, running, suffering, fighting together. But this is something that I can understand. Next time, I will not understand. The team needs him with good energy, not with frustration, you understand, he must slow down and put the mind in the right way.
Olivia, if you were Cunha, this seems simple, but surely you'd wait until the end of the season to decide on a contract, bearing in mind we're not sure whether or not Wolves will be a Premier League or a Championship club next season.
Yeah, it's difficult because I feel like he probably thinks he owes something to Wolves. His current contract runs until 2027. Now, I think whatever happens, there are going to be Premier League clubs interested in Mateus Cunha. Obviously, if he signs a new contract, it probably means Wolves will get a little bit more for him. So that's perhaps where he feels like he's doing Wolves a favour in that sort of sense. But I think there is a gap in the market right now for Mateus Cunha. He's been absolutely brilliant every single time I've watched him play, bar last night, because I think Vitor Pereira was right. His body language wasn't great. I feel like in the Premier League, there's probably only one team, and that's probably Liverpool right now, that he doesn't start for. And there's probably an air of inevitability that he is going to leave at some point, like we've seen from plenty of other Wolves players across the years. And I think for the right opportunity, Wolves aren't going to stand in his way from going. I think they've accepted that he is so brilliant, and he probably does deserve a move to one of the big six clubs because he has been that good. So I don't think signing a contract now is going to have any effect really on him going anywhere in the summer. Obviously, if they go down, he's going to go somewhere. And I think even if they stay up, I think now is the time, perhaps in the summer, for Matheus Cunha.
Pereira also said last night that Mario Lemina will not play for the club in this transfer window until the end of the deadline. So another couple of weeks without Mario Lemina, who was the club captain up until the very last few days of Gary O'Neill's reign. This is an issue I'm sure he could do without Vitor Pereira right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he said, I don't want a player with doubts. I cannot play with a player that has doubts in his mind, and says I want players committed to the project. But in one way, though, it's a situation he wouldn't want, but he's made the decision of how to deal with it very easy by Mario Lemina coming out and saying he wants to leave. It makes the decision for a manager who's just got there quite simple to say, OK, well, I can't work with you. He has gone on to say he will assess the situation if the window closes and he's still here, because he's a good player and he would want to utilise him. But right now, Mario Lemina, to be fair, just needs to secure a move away. We spoke about what it looks like with Marcus Rashford, with a player who comes out and says they want to leave publicly. It's very difficult to reintegrate a player like that because the knock-on effect it can have in the dressing room, especially when you go to the other end of the Premier League. Well, not that far away from Manchester United, actually. But if you go down to where Wolves, like you said, potentially could be a championship club with players all fighting to stay in a division, and you've got somebody in there who is very open, I do not want to be here. It's very difficult for Vitor Pereira to navigate, but he's made it very clear he's willing to take that head on.
Very uncertain times for a couple of Wolves players right now. Before we finish, I wanted to get to Fulham because they're interested in AC Milan right-back Emerson Royal. A new right-back is a priority for Fulham after an injury to Kenny Tete. He's also out of contract in the summer. Dan, it's clear to see why they may be looking for a right-back. Emerson Royal, is he the right one?
Yeah, no problems at left-back for Fulham. Obviously, Anthony Robinson going really well, but right-back is an issue at the moment, and we've seen with Fulham previously, they're not afraid to go for players with Premier League experience who maybe have struggled elsewhere, but also they seem to have this penchant for getting players in who've played in London before. We nearly made a whole 11 earlier, didn't we? Yeah. Of players Fulham have signed who'd previously played in London. Emerson Royal, obviously, probably looking over his shoulder at Kyle Walker, potentially coming to Milan. Fulham, when they're going well, are an attractive proposition given the location. They play nice football. They've got a really, really good manager. A lot of players have gone there and kind of rebuilt their careers. So Emerson Royal would look at Fulham as an attractive proposition, I would think, but you can see why Fulham need a right-back because they don't have many options there at the moment. They're flying right now. Another team who look like they're in slightly better shape, Everton, live. It doesn't look like Ernest Nuama is going to be going to Everton, though. We know that they've been looking to sign elite players in this transfer window, according to David Moyes. They scored 3 against Tottenham, so does that alleviate any fears, or do you think they need to be active still? They definitely need to be active. Yeah, it was a brilliant performance. I bet they wish they could play Spurs every single week, because in the 6 games before that game, they scored 1 goal, and suddenly 3 come along in the first half. I mean, I don't know whether it was Everton being brilliant and Spurs being bad, or a bit of both, perhaps. I mean, the finish from Dominic Calvert-Lewin was so impressive. The composure to do that in the box and to finish was brilliant, and I feel like we need to see more of that. That reminded me of the Dominic Calvert-Lewin of old, the one that we were so used to seeing score regularly in the Premier League. Iliman Ndiaye is their bright spark. He has been all season, and again, it was a lovely finish from him, but you need that from those players, but I do feel like they need a little bit more. David Moyes has already spoken since he's come in and said they need additions, but Ernest Nuama, we've seen Everton waste money over the years on players that haven't worked out. This season for Lyon, 0 goals, 0 assists, 1 yellow card, so I feel like it's best if they stay clear. Calvert-Lewin back in the fantasy team? No. Not just yet. We'll give it a few more weeks. Double game week coming up. Double game week coming up. Double game week coming up next week. Right. That's all for us for now. But Good Morning Transfers, that's back at the same time tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then Transfer Talk returns tomorrow at midday. And for a full roundup of all the day's news, catch the Transfer Show tonight at 5 and 6 p.m.
Coming up, we'll speak live to former Arsenal striker Alan Smith. Will they get a striker for the end of this transfer window?